Good afternoon, everyone. What a lovely day. Have you been looking around in the exhibition? Yeah, I can see some nodding faces. Good. It is amazing. So, I have to modify a little bit the title behind me, because it is not just about the women's perspective, but the indigenous people in whole. So, now you know that. I'd like to say a few words about our speaker. She has an experience in the field where ethnoculture overlaps with the Arctic, or the sound of Arctic. You will find out some more very soon. And I would like to also present you our moderator, who is the head of Division Coordination Unit at CIC. And as you know, we've had some guests from CIC before. It's the International Council for Game and Wildlife Conservation. So, please welcome Aitalina Fedorova and Kristóf Hecker.
Hello for everyone. My name is Aitalina Fedorova, and I'm so glad to see you here, and I'm so glad to be here in this great exhibition. Today I will talk about the indigenous peoples of Russia, and let me begin by the population of indigenous peoples of North, Siberia, and the Far East of Russia. The population of indigenous peoples of North Russia does not exceed only 50,000 peoples, and they live in areas of traditional settlement of their ancestors, who preserve the traditional ways of life, economy, and trades. Today in Russia, there are 40 nations of the North, Siberia, and the Far East. On this map, you can observe the location of the indigenous peoples, and they indicated in this map by the colored areas. By the way, I'm from the Republic of Sakha-Yakutia, and you can observe it here too. And in this republic, in winter, it could be minus 70 degrees. And now I will read the list of indigenous peoples in Russia. Karelians, Kola, Sami, Nenets, Enets, Hets, Khanty, Koraks, Dolgans, Evenks, Evenki, Chukchi, and Yukagirs. In addition, the Komi and the Yakut, indigenous peoples who are not considered numerically small. Each indigenous people have its own culture, languages, the traditional occupations, epic, and the main character of these all indigenous peoples is their lifestyle and the attitude to the nature. In the Russian Arctic, there are various nomadic peoples, the Yukagir, reindeer herders, Yakuts, the Russian Sami, and others. Throughout the year, these peoples are swinging with their herds, and it's not the man who leads the reindeer, but the reindeer leads the man. Naturally, for a reindeer herder, his whole life is connected to the tundra. The reindeer is his life. He gives food and skins for clothing. The veins are used as threads, bones are used to make jewelry, and necessary items for use. Reindeer have own way, and the man can't change it. Along the nomadism, there is hunting and fishing. In our culture, you can take as much as you need for food, no more. It's part of the way of life, tradition, and understanding of the interaction with nature. Now you can see the chum. It's a traditional dwelling, which made of poles and covered in winter with skins, and in summer with tarpaulin. Clothing and shoes made of skins are richly decorated with inserts of bright fabrics, various furs, bone, beads, tassels. The culture, language, folklore, art is carefully preserved. Now there are nomadic schools for young children. Such schools roam together with the reindeer herders. All the children unfortunately have to study in boarding schools away from the family. But there, in addition to the basic lessons, native language, songs, and dances are also studied. As I said, each indigenous peoples have own culture and traditions and interaction with nature. Nature is mother for us. That is, we obey her, not the other way around. In these photos, you can see our Etno-Theatre named The Sounds of Arctic. And today, the entire team could be here, but due to the pandemic and our current situation, they were forced to stay in Russia. So the next point of my presentation, the cult of nature, traditions, and culture of interaction with nature and the environment. First, the traditional use of nature is the basis of lifestyles of indigenous peoples and necessary condition for their existence. If traditional nature use is not preserved, if there is no access to the traditional places of hunting, gathering, and fishing, the indigenous peoples with their unique culture, language, traditions, and attitude to nature will disappear. Secondly, together with the traditional use of natural resources, the unique historical experience of ecological culture, which is the wealth of not only the indigenous peoples, but of all mankind, will also disappear. I suppose that some of you know that by the official statistics of United Nations, 70% of the world's biodiversity has been preserved exactly in the places of residence and economic activities of indigenous peoples of the world. It is thanks to their relationship with nature not to take more than necessary to preserve and protect especially valuable and sacred places. And also because of the traditional calendars of hunting, fishing, gathering, and other special rules of how much, when, and where to take. That is, certain ecological traditions that are passed down from generation to generation and which are aimed at the full balance of ecosystems, the rational coexistence of man and nature. Such traditions are, of course, unique in each nation, and they were formed depending on the natural and climatic zone in which the people live. Reindeer breeders in the tundra, hunters in the taiga, fishermen on the rivers, and the sea fishermen. Traditions are everywhere different, unique, but fully sustainable. And I want to give you some examples to illustrate it. In the taiga, the indigenous Selkap people and the Udega people didn't cut down trees to make stoves in their homes, but rather gathered Deadwood. They cut down living trees only for the extreme situations when their life depended on it. And they performed certain rituals and asked for forgiveness. This tradition was based on the fact that in the taiga, a lot of deadwood, there are trees already fallen and dry, thus taking away the dry trees, cleaned the forest as a whole, and prevented the possibility of forest fires, which could lead to death. Humans didn't distinguish themselves from the animal world and could attribute their kind to some group of animals or birds, which acquired the functions of a totem. For example, according to the Evans, the nation who live in the Republic of Sakha-Yakutia, Animals were also intelligent and understand the human speech and couldn't be insulted. It was considered that the animals voluntarily let themselves be killed by the hunter, but after death, they existed in other substances and or hypostasis. Therefore, few were killed and only for food, because they have a mind and it could be your relative or deceased ancestor. At the beginning of emptying the blood of the killed animal in gratitude for the prey and apologizing for the killed animal, the hunters spin it in different directions, referring to the spirit of the forest. And the whole process of cutting the carcass took 15 minutes, and the carcass was dismembered at the joints without breaking the tubular bones. And the main attribute of hunting activities is a knife, and it should be always clean and decorated, because it's a symbol of the respect to the nature. And the knife is used for cutting the carcass. Future hunters studies the etiquette of hunters from the deepest childhood. Never kill birds, animals without necessity. Also, according to the belief of the indigenous peoples, all nature, land, air, water, mountains, valleys, forests, tundra, were inhabited by invisible beings who were always around and constantly influenced the lives of people, depending on the attitude of each person to them and to the natural sphere that these beings represented. So it was impossible to hurt a tree for no reason, to kick an inedible mushroom, to spit in a river. For example, on the rivers, people should be quiet because the spirit of river likes the calm and she is calm. If you behave badly, the boat will turn over, the river will take away. And this is the rules of all indigenous peoples. In fact, it gives the fisherman to catch enough fish because the river is very much special sound, spread sound, and thus the fish or water beast can be frightened away. That's why the parents teach their children from the childhood that they have to be quiet on the water, and it's so important for them. They can teach it by the stories, tales, and beliefs. For example, the Evans have never expressed discontent with natural phenomena, whether it's blizzard, heavy snow, rain, heat or wind, as it was believed that in nature there is a balance between good and bad phenomena, and the weather depends on human behavior, compliance with traditions, customs, ethnic norms. Therefore, this people is very quiet, silent, with a very strong habit of mutual assistance and friendliness. For example, the Evans wore soft shoes sewn from reindeer skins with their socks upwards so as not to hurt the ground. In fact, this allowed not to leave traces on the ground and the smell of man that would not attract wolves. The Selkaps and Yukagirs also have beliefs about the master of earth and master of forests, who protect the animals to watch over their well-being. For example, there is a legend that in a certain place there were many moose, and once in the spring, when the snow was deep and soft, large animals fell into the snow and hunters could easily kill them. Getting into a gambit, they began to kill moose without counting. And they killed so many that they could not to take all meat with them. They were left with dead carcasses. Then the moose disappeared because an enraged ruler of the forest drove them away from the reckless hunters. This religious view also helped protect the animals from poachers. Thus, the basic principles of ecology and a sustainable relationship with nature developed not centuries but thousands of years ago and consist in the postulate of the unity of the world, the unity of nature and all living things. The relationship with nature is legitimized through traditions expressed in certain rituals, customs, accepted taboos. Every child from early childhood learns a whole system of prohibitions, averters, which together were understood as a set of rules for behavior in relation to nature. Vegetation, objects of nature, river, land, etc., wild and domestic animals, and humans. Now I want to note one important point, that in parallel with modern life, we prefer to keep our tradition and our rules because it's a sign of respect to our ancestors and to respect our nature forest because it's our life. Indigenous peoples created their own hunting ethics, which are learned from childhood. Breaking the ethical rules of hunting was immutable, and before the 20th century, breaking such rules could even cause tribal wars. Much has changed now, but those indigenous peoples who lead a traditional way of life are still convinced that man has no right to take from nature more than he needs. One of the first and main rules of indigenous peoples is not to kill more than you need. Literally, don't kill as much you can't eat. With that in mind, they preserved biodiversity without exterminating it. Thank you for your attention.
Hello. Okay. Thank you, Aitalina, for this good presentation. You mentioned that several times in your presentation that indigenous peoples don't take more than they need. Is this enough for the government, or do they have regulations on hunting or fishing?
We have our own rules of the hunting, and we can use always before going to hunt. Because without it, the indigenous peoples can't live, and it's important to each nation. For example, before the hunting, we prepare the traditional pancakes, and it's necessary. Without it, the hunters don't go to the forest because it's so dangerous without doing it. We do it for appease the forest spirit. We have the forest spirit named Bayanai. It's for the Yakutian nation. I am a representative of Yakutian nation. I am Yakut, and for my nation, it's one of the important rules to prepare this symbol to appease the Bayanai, because we should be always grateful. If the hunters have only one catch or 10 or more, it should be the same grateful.
So there are no written regulations by the government in your region?
No, it's no official, but it's a tradition.
The government trusts the indigenous peoples that they keep.
Yes, because the government is the traditional too. Because, for example, in the Republic of Sakha-Yakutia, the main of government is Yakut too, and he knows how to behave in the forest.
Thank you. Another question came to my mind when you were talking about beliefs, and you also mentioned when talking about the rivers that children are told different stories, different fairy tales. Can you explain a little bit more about these fairy tales?
I can tell about the Yakutian tales. For example, we believe that in the forest there are two spirits, and it's not about the good or bad, it's about the light and black spirits. I can tell one fairy tale. When I was a little girl, I listened this story by my grandmother, and she said that two boys went to the forest and they were playing, and after that one of these boys called so loudly the name of the second boy, and the black or white spirit heard it and called him, and this second boy thought that his friend called for him, but this was the spirit, and he was going to this spirit voice till the center of the forest, and he was disappeared, and nobody can't find him, and it's a very sad story, and we should be really quiet in the forest, in the water, in the river, because the spirits like the calm, and we don't disturb them.
You mentioned also that it's very cold in the winter, minus 70 degrees. I can't imagine this cold. But we also could see how well dressed indigenous peoples can be in the cold. How much degrees do they still go out? How cold can it be and they still go out?
To go out
to hunt or to
hunt
yeah.
Okay. For hunting, the degrees can be minus 50, because for us in winter minus 30 or 40 it's a lucky day, because it's really good to walk around, etc. But for hunting, minus 70 it could be dangerous, and we have the special calendar for hunting, fishing, or like that. And minus 50 degrees it can be enough to go hunt.
And we saw these tents where you live even in the winter. How do you protect yourself in the winter in these tents?
We have the special rules, surely, yes. And we have the special equipment, special clothes, which bought in our republic. And I think it's not possible to find the similar clothes in other parts of the world, because in our republic you can observe the variation of furs or other Batman, other clothes. We have a lot of furs, but we don't use it because we have the modern clothes.
But in the tents, I assume that the tents are covered with skin, with animal skin, and inside I'm sure you have some fire. Yes. So how warm is it in the tent?
For example, in Chum it can be more than 20 degrees, because there are not only one person. There can be more than 5 or 10 people, because there are the entire family.
And what are you mentioned that there are people, indigenous peoples who go fishing and others who hunt. Is there any connection? Are there peoples who both hunt and fish?
connected. Well,
So are there indigenous peoples who both go out for hunting and go out for fishing, or is this very much separated by nation? What kind of natural resources they use?
it's so complicated to answer me because I'm not the hunter or fisherman, because I'm a girl, and for the girl it can be a little secret information. I don't know.
Okay. We have still a few more minutes. Are there any questions from the floor? If this is not the case, you mentioned that you wear also shoes made of skin, not to hurt the soil, and even that you don't leave any tracks in the forest. Do you use dogs? Do the hunters use dogs to trace maybe even people
Yes.
who are lost in the forest?
Every Yakutian family who has the hunter, every hunter family has the dog, the hunter dog, and he really helps to them to hunting. And I think it's important to have the dog. Yes.
And so I guess also the children are trained or taught how to get back if they go to the forest. What are the techniques to get back to the family if you are lost in the forest, for example?
There are the special list of the rules when you lost in the forest, and the real hunters know. The real hunters know how to behave in the forest when you lost. They know the signs of nature, and it's a belief that the spirits of the forest and the Bayanai, the main spirit of the forest, the master of forest, can help you if your behavior is good, and if you believe him. You never lost in the forest, never, if your behavior is good. So we have a lot of rules how to be in forest.
Can you maybe explain a traditional dish, what you would prepare, maybe of game meat? The hunted deer or reindeer. Maybe mention us a reindeer dish you would traditionally prepare.
I can say that every woman in our republic, every Yakut girl from the young age learn how to prepare the traditional dishes. And I think it's not difficult because we have so simple recipes, because we can boil the meat and it will be enough, because we have the soup and the meat, and it's enough for us. Because in the ancient time we don't have the enough plants, because there are tundra, taiga, and there weren't the fruits and special ways to change the taste of dish.
Do you use salt in this case?
Yeah, no, salt we have. We had salt and now we have the salt. But like pepper,
Yeah.
and the
Spices.
like spices, yes, we don't have it. And
And
our other dish is so simple, yes.
And the salt, do you get the salt from the marine waters, or where do you get the salt from?
Where
what is the source of the salt? Is it from the seawater, or do you have special sources?
I think I can lie, but maybe by the mountains. And I know that in the territory of Republic there are the sea, and maybe the salt from the sea and mountains. Yes.
We have a few more minutes, so I think one of the ways to promote for the sustainable use of nature is actually through foods, through eating. So maybe tell us more about the cuisine. You mentioned that your recipes are quite simple because there are not much spices, but I'm sure you have some spices in the forests, maybe some small plants which you also use for cooking. Do you use any spices from the forest, little plants which grow in the forest?
Yes, plants we use, yes, surely, but I don't remember the exact nominations of these plants. I am bad in it, but I can say that we should, if we are good persons, we should eat the entire dishes, because every catch of the hunter is a gift from Bayanai, and we shouldn't leave it. We shouldn't
waste it.
Waste it. Yes, we shouldn't.
I think this is a lesson many of our kids have to learn, that no food should be wasted, and I think we have to learn a lot from you. And as you mentioned, we should be careful that these peoples and these traditions don't die out. And I think it is very important that you as yourself are also doing so much for keeping the traditions. And I wish you that these traditions will keep being alive and passed on from generation to generation. So. Yes. Okay.
For example, my grandfather ate the bones of fish, and he had till the 80 age very strong tooth, very strong, and he was so strong physically till the end of his life.
So that is your recommendation, that we should eat the bones of the fish to keep
yes,
our
so for men, yes. It's my recommendation, yes.
Okay. I shall give it a try next time. Thank you very much.
Thank you.